My name is Sarah, and I am 52 years old. I have spent most of my life surrounded by the past. I own an antique shop in a small town called Willowbrook. The shop sits on Main Street, its windows filled with treasures from forgotten times. Every object tells a story. Every piece holds memories. But I never imagined one object would reveal a truth that would shatter my family. It was a cold October morning when I went to an estate sale. The house belonged to Margaret Hayes, who had died at 93. She had no family. Everything she owned was being sold. I walked through the house, examining items, books, dishes, photographs of strangers. Then I saw it. A mirror in the corner of the bedroom. It was magnificent. The frame was dark mahogany, with intricate carvings of roses and vines. The glass was old and slightly cloudy, but still reflective. Something about it drew me in. I felt a strange pull. The auctioneer told me it had been in the house for generations. Margaret never moved it. It always stayed in that corner. I bought it immediately. My husband David helped me load it into our truck. As we drove home, he kept glancing at it nervously. "There's something about it that feels off," he said quietly. I dismissed his concern. I was excited about my new acquisition. We placed the mirror in our living room against the wall. The afternoon light made the old glass shimmer beautifully. My mother, Eleanor, lived with us. She was 78 years old. She had moved in after my father died 3 years earlier. Her memory was fading, but she was kind and gentle. She was the perfect grandmother to my 2 daughters. That evening, my mother came into the living room. She stopped when she saw the mirror. Her face went pale. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her voice sharp and afraid. I was surprised. "From the Hayes estate sale." "Why? Do you recognize it?" I asked. She shook her head quickly. "No, it just looks old." Her hands were trembling. She left the room without another word. David and I exchanged glances. "That was strange," I said. He nodded, looking concerned. The next morning, I was cleaning the mirror with special polish. My mother entered the room. She stared at the mirror, her face tense. Then suddenly, she screamed. It was piercing and terrified. I dropped my cloth and rushed to her, grabbing her shoulders. "Mom, what's wrong?" I asked, my heart pounding. She was shaking violently, her eyes fixed on the mirror. "I saw her," she whispered. "I saw myself." But I was young. I looked at the mirror. I saw only our reflections. "Mom, there's nothing there," I said gently. "You're seeing things." But she shook her head. tears streaming down her face. I saw myself, and I was doing something terrible. Her voice was filled with anguish. Something I swore I never did. What do you mean? I asked, fear creeping into my voice. She pulled away from me, trembling. Nothing. I saw nothing. I need to lie down, she said, and hurried from the room. I stood there, confused and frightened. What had she seen? David came downstairs. What happened? He asked. I told him everything. He looked at the mirror seriously. Maybe we should get rid of it, he suggested. I shook my head. It's just a mirror. Mom's memory is fading. That wasn't confusion, he said. That was terror. He was right. That night, I went to my mother's room. She sat on her bed, staring at the wall. Her face was pale, her hands clasped tightly. Mom, please tell me what you saw, I said softly. She didn't look at me for a long moment. Then she spoke in a whisper. I saw myself as a young woman. I was in a room I remember from long ago. And I was holding something. Holding what? I asked gently. Her voice cracked. A baby. My breath caught. A baby? She nodded slowly. But something was wrong. The baby wasn't moving. It wasn't crying. It was gone, she whispered. Mom, what are you talking about? What baby? I asked, shaking. She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. I don't want to talk about it. Please, just let it go. But I couldn't. You're clearly upset. You need to talk about it. She turned away. Some things are better left buried. Her words sent a chill down my spine. The next evening, my daughter Emily came home from school. She was 16, curious and fearless. She saw the mirror. Whoa, this is cool, she said, walking up to it. She stood in front of it, examining her reflection. Then her smile faded. Mom, come here, she said quietly. Something in her tone made my heart skip. I walked over. Do you see that? She asked, pointing at the mirror. I looked closely. At first, only our reflections. But then I saw it. Behind us was another image. A young woman who looked like my mother, decades younger. She wore an old-fashioned dress from the Chenjo by Tiras. In her arms, she held a small bundle wrapped in white cloth. The image was translucent, like a ghost, but it was there. Emily grabbed my arm. Mom, what is that? I couldn't speak. The young woman's face was full of anguish and fear. Then the image shifted. Now she was outside at night. She was kneeling on the ground, digging with her bare hands. The bundle lay beside her. She was crying, shoulders shaking. She placed the bundle into the hole she had dug. Then she covered it with dirt, frantic. "That's Grandma," Emily whispered. "What is she doing?" The image faded. We stared at our pale, frightened faces. I felt dizzy. My legs felt weak. That night, I demanded my mother come to the living room. David stood beside me. Emily sat on the couch, eyes wide. My mother stood in the doorway, refusing to enter. "You need to tell us the truth," I said firmly. "What is this mirror showing us?" "I don't know what you're talking about," she said weakly. "Yes, you do. Emily and I both saw you holding a baby. We saw you burying something. Tell us the truth." My mother's face crumpled. She started to cry, deep, agonized sobs. "Please, Sarah, don't make me do this. Please." "What are you hiding?" I asked, my voice breaking. She finally looked at the mirror. The image appeared again. This time it was even clearer. Young Eleanor in a dim room. In her arms was a tiny baby wrapped in white cloth. The baby's face was peaceful, but still, too still. My mother in the reflection was crying, whispering something. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read her lips. "I'm so sorry," over and over. Then the scene changed. She was in a backyard, digging frantically. The night was dark. She kept looking around, terrified. She placed the small bundle into the ground. She covered it with dirt, her hands shaking violently. When the image faded, I turned to my mother. She had collapsed into a chair, face buried in her hands. "Mom, what happened?" "Please tell me," I said, kneeling beside her. She took a long, shuddering breath. "I had a baby," she whispered, "before I met your father. I was 25, unmarried, alone." My heart clenched. "What happened to the baby?" "She was stillborn," my mother said through tears. "She never took a breath. She never cried. She was just gone." "Oh, Mom," I whispered, taking her hand. "I panicked," she continued. "I was terrified. This was Ichen Julbait Loksherbad. Things were different then. It was a scandal. I was afraid of being judged, afraid of being cast out." "So what did you do?" I asked, already knowing. "I buried her," she said, voice breaking. "In the backyard. I wrapped her in cloth and buried her in the middle of the night. I never told anyone. Not your father. Not you. No one." The room was silent except for her sobs. David stood with his hand over his mouth. Emily was crying quietly on the couch. "Where was the house?" I asked softly. My mother looked up, eyes red and swollen. "Maple Street," she whispered. "The Hayes house." My blood ran cold. "Margaret Hayes's house?" She nodded. "I rented a room there when I was young. Margaret's mother owned it then. That mirror was in my room. It saw everything," she whispered. I felt the weight of 50 years of secrets pressing down. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, mind spinning. My mother had carried this secret for over 5 decades. She had buried a baby, my half-sister, and never told anyone. Part of me wanted to be angry, but mostly I felt sad. Sad for my mother, who lived with this guilt. Sad for the baby who never got to live. The next morning, I told my mother what we had to do. "We have to tell someone. We have to find her." She shook her head, pale. "What good would it do now?" "It's the right thing to do," I said firmly. "She deserves to be found. She deserves a proper burial. She deserves to be remembered." My mother looked at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. "I called the police." At first they were skeptical. "An infant buried 50 years ago?" But I insisted, and they agreed to investigate. We drove to the house on Maple Street. The current owners were shocked but gave permission. A team arrived with ground-penetrating radar. They searched the backyard for hours while we waited. My mother stood silently, arms wrapped around herself, crying. And then they found her. In the far corner, beneath an old oak tree, they uncovered a small bundle of bones wrapped in decayed cloth. It was exactly where my mother said it would be. The police confirmed it was the remains of an infant. They questioned my mother gently. She answered truthfully, voice shaking. She explained everything. The stillbirth, her fear, her desperate decision, because the baby was stillborn. And so much time had passed, no criminal charges were filed. 2 weeks later, we held a funeral. It was small, just family. We buried the baby in Willowbrook Cemetery beside my father. We gave her a name, Grace Eleanor. The headstone read, "Grace Eleanor, forever in our hearts. Ichen Jubite Lo Shabbat." My mother stood at the graveside, leaning on my arm. She had aged years in the past weeks. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't give you the life you deserved. I'm sorry I hid you away. I'm sorry for everything." She knelt and placed her hand on the cold stone. "But you have a name now. You have a place. And you won't be forgotten." I knelt beside her, arm around her shoulders. You did what you thought was right. You were scared and alone. That doesn't make it right, she said. No, I agreed, but you faced it now. You've told the truth, and Grace has peace. After the funeral, we returned home. The mirror still stood in the living room. I looked at it, expecting another vision, but there was nothing. Just my own tired reflection. David suggested we return it or donate it, but I couldn't. The mirror had revealed a truth that needed telling. It had given voice to a secret. A week later, I donated it to the Historical Society. I told them the full story, everything. They created a display, the mirror's memory. People came to see it. Some thought it was cursed. Others thought it was a gift. My mother lived for 3 more years after that day. She was quieter, more reflective, but also lighter. The burden had been lifted. She talked about Grace sometimes. She would tell me stories. I think about her every day, she told me once. I always have. But now I can think without shame. I can remember her with love. She started volunteering at a crisis pregnancy center. She helped young women in situations like hers. She told them her story and offered compassion. On her deathbed, 3 years after Grace's burial, my mother held my hand. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice weak. "For what?" I asked, tears streaming. "For helping me find peace," she said. I carried that guilt for 53 years. It was eating me alive. But now Grace is at rest. She has a name. She has a place. And so do I. She closed her eyes and, with a final breath, passed away. We buried her beside Grace, as she had requested. I still think about that mirror often. I visit it sometimes. I stand in front of it, looking at my reflection. Sometimes, I wonder if it will show me another secret. But it never does. People ask if I believe it's supernatural. They ask if it's haunted or cursed. I don't know the answer. What I do know is this: the mirror forced us to confront a truth. It brought a secret into the light, and in doing so, it gave my mother and Grace peace. Some secrets are small. Some are heavy. Some we carry for years. The mirror taught me that truth will always surface. It might take decades, but it will come. And when it does, we have a choice: to hide from it or to face it. My mother chose to face it, and that choice set her free. Grace is gone, but she is not forgotten. She is part of our family now, part of our story. Her life was brief, but she mattered. She was loved. She is remembered. Every year we visit her grave on the anniversary. We bring flowers and sit quietly. My daughters know the story now. They understand their grandmother. They know she made a mistake born of fear, but they also know she tried to make it right, and they know Grace's name. That is what matters most. The truth was hidden for 50 years, but in the end, it was told. And a life, however brief, was acknowledged and honored. The mirror showed us the past, but it also gave us a chance to shape the future with honesty, compassion, and love. And for that, I will always be grateful. Thank you for reading this story. May we all find the courage to face our hidden truths. No matter how deeply buried they may be. Take care, everyone.